It was an ordinary day, and I was already halfway to my car when something caught my attention. I stopped in my tracks, as what I saw seemed so out of place in the mundane routine of the parking lot. It was just a regular shopping cart, parked carelessly near the edge of the lot. The wheels were slightly turned, as if someone had abandoned it hastily, leaving it to rest crookedly. At first, it didn't seem like much, just another discarded object. But then, as I glanced closer, I noticed something that stopped me in my tracks. A small puppy, no more than 3 or 4 months old, was curled up in the corner of the cart. The little creature was so still that at first I wasn't sure if it was even alive. Its fur was matted and dusty, the result of being left in this spot for who knows how long. The puppy's ears were oversized for its tiny head, and its legs were tucked tightly beneath it as though it was trying to make itself invisible. The way it lay there, so vulnerable, broke my heart. But what really struck me was the toy it was clutching, a plush blue elephant. The toy was worn and had seen better days, with one of its ears completely missing. The puppy didn't make a sound. It didn't bark or whimper. It just stared at me with wide, brown eyes that seemed full of confusion and hope, as if waiting for something, or maybe someone, to show up. It wasn't just lying there, it was waiting. I felt a deep pang in my chest as I realized that the little dog must have been abandoned, left alone in a world that didn't seem to care about him. I looked around, hoping to see someone who might be looking for this puppy. But there was nothing. People were walking past, loading their groceries into their cars, laughing and chatting on their phones, oblivious to the little creature sitting in the cart. No one noticed him. No one even slowed down to take a second glance. It was as though the puppy didn't even exist, just a speck of sadness in a vast, indifferent world. Without thinking, I began walking toward the cart, my heart already pounding in my chest. I was drawn to him, not knowing exactly why, but feeling an overwhelming need to help. I crouched down beside the cart, slowly and quietly, trying not to startle him. "Hey, buddy," I whispered softly, my voice gentle. The puppy stiffened slightly at the sound of my voice. His grip on the toy tightened, but he didn't pull away, didn't run. He just kept looking at me with those sad, trusting eyes. I sat there for a while, not reaching for him, just letting him see me, letting him know that I wasn't a threat. I could tell he was unsure, torn between trusting me and his own fear. Minutes passed, though I didn't notice how long it had been. I found myself lost in the quiet, in the stillness of the moment. And then, without even meaning to, I did something unexpected. I sat down on the warm pavement of the parking lot, right next to the cart, and waited. The sun beat down on my back, but I didn't care. I stayed there, close to him, allowing him time to decide whether he could trust me. The puppy didn't move, but he kept his eyes on me, barely blinking. It was as if he was still trying to figure out if I was safe, if I could be trusted. The world around us carried on as usual. Cars continued to come and go. People walked past, their lives unfolding, unaware of the bond that was slowly beginning to form between this little puppy and me. I didn't rush him. I just stayed, quietly sitting beside him. I remember at one point, a woman walked by with her 2 children. The little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve and pointed. "Look, Mommy, a puppy," she said, her voice filled with wonder. But the mother barely glanced in our direction and said, "Don't touch it," as she hurried the girl along. The puppy didn't react. He simply stayed where he was, curling tighter around the toy, as though trying to protect himself from the world around him. The parking lot had become quieter as time passed, and with each minute, I found myself more and more absorbed in the stillness. The sun beat down harshly, but I didn't move. I didn't want to startle the puppy. I wanted him to feel safe, to feel that I wasn't a threat. His eyes remained locked on me, not blinking, just watching me carefully, as if he was trying to decide whether I was someone who could be trusted. I didn't make any sudden movements or try to force any connection. I simply sat there, my heart heavy with a mixture of sadness and empathy. I kept hoping that somehow someone would come, someone who would make all of this make sense, someone who would walk up and say, "Oh, there you are. I've been looking for you." But as much as I wished that, I knew it wasn't coming. Cars continued to arrive and leave, and people continued with their daily lives, paying no attention to the abandoned puppy in the cart. They walked by as if nothing was wrong. The world around him continued spinning, while his world remained still. I could feel the sadness settle deeper into my heart as I watched him. It was as though he was invisible to everyone. At one point, a woman with 2 young children walked by. The little girl, no older than 5 or 6, tugged on her mother's arm and pointed. "Look, Mommy, a puppy," she said, her voice filled with innocent wonder. But the mother barely looked at the cart. "Don't touch it," she said dismissively, pulling the little girl along. They continued on their way without a second glance. The puppy didn't react. He didn't even raise his head. His eyes stayed locked on me, and he just curled tighter around the toy. It was as if the toy, that worn-out blue elephant, was the only thing he had left. I stood up, needing a closer look. I searched the cart for anything that might give me a clue about who he was or where he came from. Maybe a note, a collar, anything. But there was nothing. Just a puppy, the toy, and some scattered crumbs at the bottom of the cart. It struck me how little there was. Nothing but a small life left to fend for itself. Feeling helpless, I reached into my bag and pulled out a half-eaten sandwich I had left from lunch. Turkey and cheese. I tore off a small piece and set it down on the pavement near the cart. I didn't want to startle him, so I sat back a little and watched. The puppy didn't move. He just sniffed the air, his nose twitching slightly, but he didn't come for food. It wasn't until I deliberately scooted back a little and looked away that I heard the soft shuffle of movement. When I turned back, the food was gone. The toy was still in his mouth, but the sandwich was nowhere to be seen. I watched him for a moment, heart heavy. He wasn't just waiting for food. He was waiting for something more. Time seemed to move differently as I sat there. Hours had passed without me realizing, and yet I couldn't bring myself to leave. I just couldn't, not while he was still waiting. The puppy, with his toy clutched in his mouth, didn't move, didn't even shift from his spot. He was still waiting. I kept hoping that someone, anyone, would come for him, that I would hear footsteps, a voice calling out for him, but it never came. The parking lot grew quieter as more people left for the day, the shadows of the evening creeping over the pavement. Still no one came. I could feel my heart ache with every passing minute. His eyes were still on me, and I could feel the weight of his gaze, almost as though he was asking me, "Are you going to help me?" But no one else had, and I wonder if I was the only one who could see him, the only one who cared enough to stop. When the streetlights flickered on, I sighed softly and looked at him again. "I don't think they're coming back," I whispered to him, though I wasn't sure who I was really saying it to. His ears twitched at my words, and for the first time his grip on the toy loosened just enough for me to reach out slowly. I didn't want to scare him. I didn't want to hurt him. I simply let my fingers brush the edge of the cart, making sure he could see my hand, see that I wasn't a threat. He didn't pull away, didn't growl. He just kept looking at me, and in that look, I could see something that hurt. It wasn't hope, the kind that lifts you up. It was the kind of hope that comes from desperation, from waiting for something you're not sure will ever come. I stood up slowly, trying not to startle him. I opened the back door of my car, grabbed an old fleece blanket I kept in the back, one I used for rescue runs, and sometimes just for comfort, and gently folded it inside the cart, making a small bed for him. The puppy watched me, and I could feel my heart beat faster. Would he trust me? Would he come with me? Or would he shy away, afraid of another stranger? But after a few long moments, he shifted slightly. He placed the blue elephant down beside him, and for the first time, I saw him touch the blanket. He sniffed it once, then looked back at me. I kept my hands low, palms open, showing him I meant no harm. My heart was racing in my chest, louder than the noise of the cars in the distance. And then the puppy stepped onto the blanket. One paw, then the other. He hesitated for a moment, but then he curled up on the blanket next to the toy like it was the only thing he'd ever known. I didn't waste any time. I knew this was my chance. I moved slowly, wrapping the blanket gently around him like a cocoon. He didn't resist. He didn't fight me or whine. He just let me. I expected him to squirm, to panic, but he didn't. Instead, he tucked his head under my chin. His little body trembled not from fear, but from exhaustion. He had been waiting, alone, for so long. I placed him gently in the back seat of my car. The toy was still tightly clutched in his mouth. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, hands on the wheel, not starting the car. I just needed a moment to breathe, to process what had just happened. The reality of it all was hitting me hard. But it wasn't fear. It was something else. Something heavier. The drive home was quiet. The puppy didn't make a sound. He didn't move, just sat curled up in the back seat, eyes fixed on the world outside. As we drove, every red light seemed to last forever. I kept glancing back at him, half expecting him to disappear, like maybe this was just a dream, one I would wake up from. But when we pulled into my driveway, I knew it was real. I knew I had just changed a life. Maybe his, maybe mine. I opened the back door, crouched down, and called out softly, "Come on, buddy." To my surprise, he stood up a little shaky, but on his own. I stepped back, and he followed me inside. I laid the blanket on the living room floor and placed a bowl of water next to it. He sniffed the water, drank slowly, and sat down. I moved around the room, giving him space, not wanting to overwhelm him. He didn't bark, didn't whine. He just watched me, his eyes filled with curiosity and caution. That night, I didn't sleep much. The sound of his breathing, soft and steady, was all I could hear. Every now and then, I'd peek over the edge of the couch to make sure he was still there. Each time, I found him watching me too, like he wasn't sure if this was real, if he could finally relax. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard a soft thump. I turned my head and saw him beside the couch, toy in his mouth, looking up at me. He set the toy down gently, then curled up on the floor beside me, his back pressed against the side of the couch. It was as if he needed to be close to me, to make sure I wasn't going anywhere. "I'm right here," I whispered to him. For the first time since I found him, he let out a tiny sigh, as if he had finally found peace.